Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to Europe and we're going to return to Latvia once again, and we're returning to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good few times before. Now, if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that these guys are one of the best known Latvian craft breweries, and they're probably best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs, although they have been doing some very good big fruity juicy creamy smoothie, whatever you want to call them, sour beers recently, and they do put out a good few Imperial Stouts as well actually. So yeah, definitely one of the breweries you want to check out if you're interested in Latvian craft beer, and there are some great breweries in the Baltic states generally speaking. But yeah, for this review, like I said, we're returning to a brewery that's been on the channel before. We have actually reviewed a beer that's very similar to this one on the channel, and that was released a couple of years back. But this one has another adjunct in it that I very much enjoy when it comes to this beer style, and this is a style that I do quite enjoy actually. It's a little bit of a treat, this one, and the beer itself is very highly rated. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Eimuri, which is to the kind of northeast of Riga, the Latvian capital, which is in the western part of the country. And that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Ārpus Brewing Company. So this particular beer is called Vanilla Maple Coffee Imperial Stout. It comes in at 12% ABV, and from the name I think you can guess what kind of beer this one is. But yeah, maybe about a year or two ago we reviewed the Vanilla Maple Imperial Stout from these guys, and that was very nice. So this one has coffee in it this time obviously, and if you've watched the channel for any length of time you'll know that I'm a big fan of Imperial coffee stouts. Coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts to use in Imperial Stouts, and you know, these guys do a very good Imperial Stout based on my previous experiences. So this is a beer that definitely caught my eye. It's another one I picked up at Gur Beer in the One Mall in Chimshatchui here in Hong Kong. They've got a great selection of beers from across Europe and the States, Australia and things like that. So if you find yourself here in Hong Kong, that's one of the places that you definitely need to check out. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go on. A 12% vanilla, maple syrup and coffee Imperial Stout from the wonderful Ārpus Brewing Company in Latvia. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Ārpus Brewing Company before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Latvian playlist, and that's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, and you can check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, and I do recommend you do that because there are some very nice things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Ārpus Brewing Company once again. So Ārpus Brewing Company, as I've mentioned to you already, are from Latvia, and the company was founded back in 2017 by two homebrewers. So this was Yirts Tihomirovs and Vladimir Berezins, and I do apologise for any bad Latvian pronunciations in this video. It's a very different language and one that I have pretty much zero familiarity with. But these guys started off as a gypsy brewery, and they were based primarily in Riga, and in the first year they brewed at 4 different breweries around the whole country, which they say helped them really understand about different brewing equipment and gave them a very good base for putting together their own facility. A few years later, in 2019, they received funding from the Latvian Investment and Development Agency and also from the EU Agricultural Fund for Rural Development, and they invested around €200,000 in their own brewery in Eimuri in the Adaji region to the northeast of Riga. So the new brewery helped them increase their output quite dramatically, and they apparently export around 90% of their output. So this is quite a common business model actually when it comes to Baltic breweries, because the populations in these countries are very small. Estonia is 1.3 million, Latvia is about 2 million, and I think Lithuania is about 3.2 million. So yeah, they quite often they have bigger breweries and they export a lot of their beer to Western Europe. And for us in Western and Northern Europe and things, it's very good because you get good quality beer at pretty damn good price as well. So yeah, Baltic beer is quite easy to find. But the brewery are currently operating a 2,000 litre brew kit. They've got several 2,000 and 4,000 litre fermentation vessels, and the fermentation capacity has been gradually increasing over the last few years. As of March 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced just over 80 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. I'm surprised it's not a little bit more, to be honest with you, because they seem to do a whole host of different IPAs and things like that. But yeah, if people were to ask me about this brewery, probably best known for their New England hazy sort of IPAs, but yeah, it's mainly New England hazies, kind of sweeter imperial stouts, and also the big kind of modern juicy fruity sort of smoothie sour type beers that these guys are doing. So yeah, if you're into those kind of things, this brewery is definitely one that you want to check out, and they're probably the best known Latvian craft brewery as well. But there are a few others starting to get their beers out there and across the European continent. Odu Brewery is one, and there are a few others. So yeah, keep your eyes out because the Baltic beer scene is pretty interesting these days. But yeah, like I said, the only other thing I can say about this brewery is that the word Arpus comes from the Latvian word that means sort of outside of the box. So yeah, this is quite an interesting name, and that's why their symbol, of course, is a box, but the name is inside the box, which is interesting. But yeah, if you want to learn more about this brewery, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's everything that we need to say about the brewery. Let's go on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. You can see it's kind of like faded candles or light bulbs or something like that. So it's quite nice, I have to say. I'll just put my face behind the can so that the camera focuses on it, because this phone does have, like, you know, face recognition and face capture technology. But there you can see Ārpus Brewing Company. It's very nice. You can get a good little look at the artwork on this one too. It's a 440 milliliter can, incidentally. I can't remember what I paid for this actually at Gour Beer, but the prices of the Arpus stuff are always pretty good. As I say, Baltic beer is quite cheap and it's always very good quality. So not going to complain about that. But yeah, vanilla, maple syrup and coffee Imperial Stout. As I said, coffee beans are one of my favourite adjuncts when it comes to Imperial Stouts, because they are pretty much, coffee beans are pretty much as diverse as hops. You know, they can be grown in different parts of the world, so you've got different soil profiles and different water profiles, you've got the different kind of individual bean, and then the other big factor with coffee is the mazel, which is the meters above sea level at which the coffee is grown, and essentially the higher up that you grow the coffee, the more likely you are to get really kind of random and interesting flavours out of it. So that's all worth bearing in mind. Like we said, this one comes in at 12% ABV, so let's get this guy out into the glass and just see what it's all about. I'm really very, very curious about this. As I said earlier, a lot of the Arpus Imperial Stouts, in my experience, tend to be leaning toward the sweeter side of things, but with this one having the coffee in it, I'm quite curious to see how this one goes. I've told you many a time on the channel, I'm not the greatest fan of the Imperial pastry stouts. They can really be a hit or a miss with me. I'm much more a fan of the milk stouts and the RISs and things like that, but a pastry stout can always be a hit or a miss with me. Imperial coffee stouts though I love. But you can see that this beer, when we poured it, it came out with about a quarter finger of a frothy, very, very dark tan head, but that has completely faded away now, and we've got the vast majority of the beer in the glass at the moment. One or two little bubbles of carbonation visible sticking to the side of the glass, and a little stream just going up the side there, but yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation. And you know, you would, at 12% ABV, you don't expect the head on these beers to hang around all that long. This one, I should point out that this Imperial Stout contains wheat and oats in addition to the regular barley, and because of that, I'm not sure how well you guys are going to see that, but because of that, this beer is pretty much opaque as anything. This is black as night, this beer. So yeah, you're not even going to get any of that kind of, you get a little tiny hint of that sort of Coca-Cola, Pepsi sort of edge to it as the light passes through, but that's very, very minimum because of that presence of oat and wheat. That kind of makes the beer hazy, if you like. So very little transparency to this beer. But yeah, you can certainly see little bits of suspension in this one. You can see the lacing on the glass there as well. This beer is going to be thick as anything. So remember, with Imperial Stouts, there are two main things you can do to these beers to sort of change, to sort of make them more complex. You can either do like a double mash, which is going to give them a really kind of thick, sticky mouthfeel and things, or you can do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you nice kind of leathery brown sugars and really ramp up the complexity of the beer. So it just kind of depends what you're looking for, but obviously the wheat and the oats in this one are going to thicken out the mouthfeel quite a bit. If you barrel age an Imperial Stout, of course, you are going to sacrifice some of the thickness of the mouthfeel, but at the same time you're going to add the infused flavours. These are the sort of variables that you're playing about with when it comes to this particular beer style. But yeah, in terms of colour, this one is pretty much black as night, ebony, rosewood, however you want to describe it. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer are going to affect its colour as well. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts and Porters and stuff, it's very difficult to actually affect the colour, because the black malt is so kind of dominating, I guess we could say. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance or any technical details about the style. So aroma time. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this is really interesting actually. It smells lovely. You've got a really nice balance in this one between being a sort of sweet milk stout almost, and you've also got the coffee in there. It smells as if it's really nicely balanced. Yeah, I think this is going to be really good actually. Gives you everything you'd want aroma wise from the style. So it's quite a sweet leaning stout this, but you do get that coffee bitterness just at the back end. That's lovely. Wouldn't expect anything else. The vanilla maple Imperial Stout that we had from these guys a while back was really good, and so this one, not surprised that this one comes across really, really nicely. So yeah, let's just break this aroma down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So on the in terms of the backbone of this beer then, it actually comes across as being sort of cakey in a sense. So if you take the aroma in, you do get a little bit of a roasty, toasty, like well-fired bread crusty note. Absolutely. There is a little bit of woodiness to it as well. Little hints of nuttiness. And there is a wee bit of like an almost rye bready character in there, but you know, rye malt has not been used in the malt base here. So maybe it's just a mix of the wheat and the kind of darker barley malts that's giving you that impression. But yeah, the malty backbone comes across as being, as I say, quite cakey. It reminds me of like Christmas, Scottish Christmas pudding. My dad used to love getting this for his birthday. So it's almost like a kind of thick chocolate sponge brownie type thing, but like it's soaked in a kind of brandy or something and then burned a little bit. It's kind of like that. So you've got this like spongy, cakey, brownie, chocolatey sort of thing that seems to be making up the majority of the kind of malty backbone in this beer, which is really nice. And of course within that you can smell the vanilla coming out, and the vanilla contributes. There's quite a bit of chocolate to this beer as well. So you can smell some darker chocolate, you know, a sort of 70-80% cocoa, but the presence of the vanilla is really apparent at the front of the nose. And it also gives you the impression of a slightly more milky chocolate, you know, a sort of 30-40% chocolate as well. And of course then you've got all the brown sugary notes coming out of this one. So the maple syrup is very, very clear as well, as you'd expect. But you certainly get a wee bit of like a toasty brown sugar at the same time. So yeah, a little bit of a toasty brown sugary character. Big treacle molasses type notes in there. So yeah, big treacly molasses type notes for sure. You do have a sweeter caramel as well, as I say, a little bit of a toasty brown sugar. There's maybe a little bit like a Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing going on in this one as well. So you've got all of these elements kind of playing in with that big malt base. The one thing we haven't really mentioned though is the coffee, and the coffee actually takes a little bit of a back seat in the aroma. I think we're going to get a lot more from the coffee in the actual flavour of the beer. So yeah, the coffee is there. If you take the aroma in like really deeply, there's a lot of it. So for me, I'm never going to be able to place exactly where the bean is from or whatever, but the coffee does have a degree of like, it's got a very soft roast. There is a wee tiny bit of earthiness to it, but I find it quite floral, and it's also got quite a little bit of a kind of red fruity sort of thing going on, like a plummy raisiny type character. So yeah, the coffee bean is sitting there in the back of the nose for sure. As I say, coffee beans for me are fascinating as adjuncts. They can add a hell of a lot of complexity to these kind of beers. At that, I think we've said everything we need to about the kind of malty, yeasty and adjuncty side of this beer. So let's focus on the hoppy and the fruity side of things then. So on the hoppy side of things, remember, Imperial Stouts are not the most hop-forward styles of beer, but the hops do help balance out the beer. And you know, with a beer like this, you could obviously age it for, you know, a year or two, and you're going to get more kind of silky, sort of leathery type elements coming out in the mouthfeel if you do that. And the flavour that'll be reflected in the flavour. We're drinking this one probably pretty fresh. I suspect just from the date on this, it's been canned in December of 2023, because it says best, I think what it's saying there, yeah, best before 12/25, and probably they're saying, yeah, keep this for 2 years. You could keep it longer. If you do that though, the hoppy character is going to drop out the beer a little bit. In this one, I can definitely get a little bit of an earthiness. There's a nice wee bit of floral aromaticity in there, and you've also got that wee bit of grassiness coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, there is a wee bit of that going on in this one. But you also have yeah, you've also got quite a lot of fruitiness to this beer too. Like, I'm getting a lot of big juicy plummy character. There is a wee bit of raisiny sharpness, but not too much. Yeah, a lot of juicy plum, good little bit of datey character in there as well underneath. Some sultana, prune as well. Prunes are just dried plums. Fig, as I say, and you've got a wee bit of an oily, like black curranty character to this one, and maybe just a little hint of blackberry coming out of this too. So yeah, all in all, this smells like a really, really lovely beer actually. I think this is going to be pretty awesome. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. That's always half the experience when it comes to trying craft beer and whiskey and sake and things like that. But yeah, I think it's about time to try this one. So this is the Vanilla Maple Coffee Imperial Stout at 12% ABV from Ārpus Brewing Company in Eimuri, Adagi, just outside of Riga in Latvia. Let's get stuck in. Slanja, skål, cheers, or as they say in Latvian, prijeka. Here we go. Yeah, that's lovely. That is very, very good. I think I've still got a little bit left in the can actually, so we're not going to waste this. This is my sipping beer for the evening. I've got quite a few heavy ones in the fridge that I'm just going to, 5 or 6 of them that I'm going to work through over the week. We'll do one a night. But yeah, once again, Arpus really showing why these guys are, why they're top class. The only thing I would say about Arpus is I wish they would try a few more different styles. It'd be really cool to see these guys have a go at brewing some West Coast IPAs and some black IPAs. They've maybe done them on occasion, but I've never seen them. It's always been hazy, Imperial Stout, or kind of big mental, fruity, juicy, sour type thing. I'd love to see these guys have a go at like a West Coast double IPA and triple and things. I'd love to see them do it because they're very capable brewery, very, very capable. But yeah, once again, they've delivered on the Imperial Stout. This is a big, silky, smooth, sweet thing, and it just gives you that little bit of dryness into the aftertaste too. So it's kind of like an Imperial Milk Stout or an Imperial Sweet Stout, and it just has the coffee giving you that little bit of dryness and complexity. Awesome stuff. Wouldn't expect anything less. Let's try and just break down the flavour of this beer and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth then. Yeah, this is really, really nice actually. Very, very good beer. So, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you have a lovely, you have this lovely, very kind of smooth, just toasty, bread crusty character. It's not even like roasty and black malt, it's actually very, very smooth. So you can feel that lingering there. In the middle third of your palate. That's the backbone of the beer. As you go further forward, you get a wee bit of a kind of woody character coming out of this one. So yeah, just a little bit of woodiness in there, and then above that kind of bread crusty character, it actually gets sweeter and sweeter into the aftertaste. I'm more tempted now to say like rye bread crust. Definitely got some of that in there. And then you get this nice kind of like dense, sweet, oily, like German rye bread character, that's in there too. As I say, within that rye bread, you know, toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you're getting a wee bit of a more nutty type thing coming out of this one. So yeah. So yeah, the way that this beer pieces together on the malty backbone is really very nice. Above the that sort of rye bready layer that you have, it's more kind of a grainy dry layer. Then you start to get that more dense cakey note coming out of the beer, and it's interesting because the cakey side of the beer for me, it's a lot less sort of Christmas puddingy than I thought it was going to be. It's got a little bit of an almost like praline kind of truffle type vibe to it. But yeah, it's like a, you know, like a sticky kind of praline, truffly sort of chocolate brownie, like an American chocolate brownie. That's what this layer, that big cakey layer feels like on top of the rye bread. But it's almost as if you've got a little bit of like a cake crust between the rye bread and the other things. So yeah, the way that that goes together is really, really nice. So yeah, it's lovely. So on top of that cakey layer, as I say, you get a little bit of the nuttiness in there, and the vanilla. I think the vanilla sort of sits in that. It almost feels like that brownie cakey thing. It sort of feels like the maple syrup is kind of infused into that sort of cakey layer. And the maple syrup comes out a little bit further back, and then as you come further forward in that cakey layer, you get a little bit like the praline nut and then the vanilla. But then above the cakey layer, you start to get like a really smooth, kind of thick chocolate. If you go to the back of that front third of your palate, the chocolatey layer is maybe like 60% cocoa chocolate. It's actually, it has a little bit of dark chocolate character to it, but not too much. But as you move further forward, you can feel that the chocolate gets very, very sweet and very, very milky. The vanilla, of course, is helping with that in this one. This doesn't have lactose in it, does it? No lactose mentioned on the ingredients with this one. But yeah, you can really feel that big chocolatey character coming out of this one. I think, when I was talking about double mash and long wort boils and things like that, I think with this beer, it maybe has had a slightly longer wort boil, but it's also double mash actually. But not too long a wort boil. It's not leathery enough for that. It's more kind of silky and thick and chewy, this stout. But yeah, that's the chocolatey layer. Above that, you start to get the brown sugars. And the brown sugary layer in this beer for me is very, very nice. So the maple syrup in this one's quite interesting. It almost feels as if it like coats everything, like it coats that chocolatey layer and the kind of cakey layer in a sense. So the maple syrup is coming out of this one, and it's actually got a bit of dryness to it, but it is very, very prominent, I would say. But yeah, above the kind of chocolatey layer, you start to get the more dense brown sugars that you would expect from the, you get the more dense brown sugars that come out of this one. So if you go to the very center of your palate, you can feel that really nice kind of big, oily, you can feel that really nice big oily treacle molasses sort of thing coming out of this one. So that's there, and as you move further out from that, it does become a little bit more like a kind of sweeter caramel. There is a wee bit of like a leathery brown sugary layer underneath that, but then yeah, as you go to the real extremities of that middle third of your palate, you do get the maple syrup and the drier aspects of the maple syrup. So that's all really, really apparent in this particular beer. Yeah, and the middle third of the palate is of course where the majority of the complexity of this one is, and it's absolutely lovely. So let's go to the back third of your palate. As I often say, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But let's have a wee look at that. Yeah, let's have a wee look at that border region between middle and back third of your palate. So in there, you've got a nice little bit of the kind of bready character on the base, and then the more kind of cakey, brownie-like character on top. You do get some of the coffee in there. I think the coffee actually comes out a little bit more in the back third of your palate. So let's look at that. So you've got that kind of bread crusty base, which is a little bit drier. Above that, you have the above that you have the kind of rye bready layer, which was a little bit lighter and more airy and slightly dry. And then above that you get that kind of more dense, cakey layer, but again, that chocolate brownie type layer, but you can feel that's lighter and more airy. And then above that, you can feel some of the maple syrup coming out, the drier aspects of the maple syrup. And you've also got the coffee. The coffee kind of feels infused into the flavour of the beer. I think I would say the coffee comes out more in the aftertaste. I think the coffee's taken a back seat to the maple syrup and the vanilla in this one. I get the feeling they've probably used proper coffee beans in this one, but I think the maple syrup, and probably the maple syrup is genuine maple syrup. The vanilla, I think, is maybe the flavour essence. So yeah, maybe that's what's going on in this one, because it's just the pungency of these flavours. It could be down to volume right enough, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of flavour essence that's going on in this one, just because of how sweet it is. I'd be curious to know, but it does say on the back, yeah, maple, vanilla, maple syrup and coffee, so it may well be the real deal and they've just put a shitload of it in. I'd be curious to know. And yeah, I think the thing that's really probably thickening this up too, they probably have put a load of maple syrup in it. That would also be another thing that could explain the thickness of the mouthfeel. But let's concentrate on that coffee flavour. The coffee flavour actually has a bit more, compared to what I was getting from the aroma, it actually has more of an earthiness to it. It's a nice dry earthy roast, this one. You do get a wee bit of that floral character, and you do get a little bit of the red fruit as well. It's more like a prune and datey sort of thing that's coming out of that one, and that lingers in the aftertaste. You can feel the coffee coming out from the back third of your palate, which is really, really interesting. And it feels like it's kind of infused into the bready layers and the base layer, the sort of bread crusty layer in the back of your tongue. But as I say, that flavour takes a wee bit of time to evolve. You've seen how long it was since I took a sip of this one, and it's really starting to show now. But the impact flavour of this beer are undoubtedly very, very sweet. But yeah, above those layers on the back third of the palate that I was talking about, you've got the yeasty side of this beer. So the yeasty side of the beer for me is like quite a dense, brown bready sort of thing, like a sweet brandy soaked fruit roll type bread. Around that you get more of a kind of rye bready character, like a dense drier rye bread, and then you've got the crust just kind of sitting around that as well. So yeah, the way everything goes together in this beer is really, really nice. But yeah, Definitely the back third of the palate, the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, really, really nice malty, yeasty, adjuncty component in this beer. And like I say, it's a big, thick, oily, sweet stout. It's lovely. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things then, the green component. Back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness out of this. As you move further forward, it's just got a little bit of herbal character, and as you push along forward to the side, you get a little bit of sort of floral aromaticity coming out of it. So yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. So the oily side of this beer is really nice. On the green component, I think that's everything we really need to say. So for me, we can focus now on the front third of the palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that build up in there. You get the brown bread, the sort of rye bread in the base, and the more dense cakey note on top. The base of the front third of your palate, you've got the bread crust again, you've got the sweet kind of brown bread, and then you've got a kind of more squashed layer of that dense kind of cakey note in there. And you can feel a wee bit of the maple syrup there too, but then above that you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out the beer. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that. So yeah, fruity side of the beer is very much as I expected it to be. Not quite as red fruity, right enough. It's still really nice. I mean, I'm getting a lot of, so I am getting more dried fruit out of this one. It's got a big pruny note to it, like sultanas as well. There's prunes, sultanas, you know, dry white green grapes. You've got dates in there as well. As you move further forward into the middle of that front third of your palate, yeah, you start to get more of a juicy kind of figgy character. And then there's the black currant sitting there just behind on the front half of the front third of your tongue. Maybe just a little tiny hint of a sharper blackberry, but that's very, very tiny, to be honest with you. And yeah, maybe I do get a little hint of that juicier, slightly sharper raisin too. But overall, flavour profile of this one is really, really very, very nice. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. Kind of had a good feeling it would be, and it proved to be right. But yeah, definitely more vanilla and maple syrup forward. The coffee takes a wee bit of time to evolve during the aftertaste. But yeah, let's leave it at that for the tasting section. Let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So unquestionably, this beer is full-bodied. The carbonation is very, very smooth. It's a big, thick, I don't know if creamy is the right word. It has got a little bit of like an almost creaminess to it, this one, like a milk stout. I would have guessed that it had a little bit of kind of lactose in it if I hadn't seen the ingredients list. But yeah, it has a little bit of that creaminess, but big, big, thick, sticky oiliness. Definitely double mash. Triple mash wouldn't surprise me either. But yeah, the way everything goes together in this one is really very, very nice in that sense. IBU wise, it's a very low IBU stout, this one, you know, 20 or something at the most. The coffee gives you a wee bit of dryness, and there is a wee bit of the dryness from the grainy side of the bread, but yeah, like I say, not really anything that's going to blow the head off you, if you like. The malt base, as we said, a bit dry underneath. Then you've got the big kind of sweet smoothness in the middle, then the really sweet character sitting on top there, nice kind of juicy fruity notes as well. And yeah, you've just got a little bit of green component remaining in this one, but you could obviously age the beer a little bit more and that would drop away. But as I say, all in all, another beautiful Imperial Stout from the guys at Arpus. Not surprised. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this one. So I'm going to enjoy the rest of this now. Definitely a sipper. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Ārpus Brewing Company as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. Till then, check out my social media, check out their social media, follow Gur Beer in Chim Sha Tsui here in Hong Kong, and go and buy some nice beers from them. Let me know any other Latvian breweries that you would recommend as well, and I'll see what we can do about reviewing some of those on the channel. So yeah, thank you just now, and I will see you guys later. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and prieka. The vanilla maple coffee Imperial Stout, 12% ABV from Ārpus Brewing Company in Eimuri, just outside of Riga in Latvia. Ciao.